Good evening and welcome, everybody. I'm Councillor Sayal Raza, Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It is now just past 7 p.m. and I would like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the committee. My fellow scrutineers, guests from the NHS, members and officers, the council and the members of the public were present with us in House of House or watching this on our YouTube channel. Today is the first substantive meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee this municipal year. I'd like to welcome all our scrutineers, old and new to the committee, and ask that you take a moment just to introduce yourselves. So I'll begin. So my name is Councillor Saya Raza. I represent Hounslow South Ward, and like I was mentioning, I'm the chair of this committee. And if we just go around, that'd be great.
Yeah. I'm the vice chair for this committee.
I'm Ghazala Butt. I represent Cranford Ward.
Right. Well, I'm Richard Foote. Now I am here, but that one's not working. And I'm a representative from Hamworth Village Ward. Try this one.
I'm Councillor Kuldeep Chand, representing Feltham North Ward.
Councillor Riaz Gul, Councillor from Heston Central Ward.
I'm Councillor Jack Emsley. I'm the councillor for Chiswick Homefields Ward.
I'm Emma Yates and I'm councillor for Brentford West.
I'm Emma Sidhu and I represent Heston West.
Brilliant, thank you all. Our agenda today sees us look at changes to NHS community services in the borough and proposed changes to the council. Yeah, sorry. Go. Yeah, okay. No problem. Thank you for that. I'll start that again. Our agenda today sees us looking at changes to NHS community services in the borough and proposed changes to the council's London Borough of Hounslows Council Tax Support Scheme. In addition, we have several shorter items on our agenda this year. A report on Care Quality Commission assessment of the council's adult social care service. A review of the council's Q1 delivery plan. Updates from the chairs of this year's scrutiny panels, a review of the council's forward plan, a chance to review and revise the committee's own work programme, and urgent business should there be any. For the benefit of our guests, the scrutineers old and new, I'll take a few moments to set out how the meetings work. As chair, I'll run the meeting and invite people to speak. I hope we can combine questions and observations as we did last municipal year to allow for a more fluid discussion. I shall invite our guests to introduce their report. I will then invite members of the committee to ask questions of our guests. I, or Councillor Mia, my vice chair, shall then speak last and then briefly sum up the discussions and advise of any issues or common ground to note. Every member of the committee who wishes to speak will have the opportunity to speak. Please be mindful of your fellow committee members and our guests and ensure your contributions are pertinent and help us to frame meaningful recommendations. Having set out the way in which I will chair the meeting, shall we begin? Okay, so now we start with agenda item number 1. Apologies for absence, declarations of interest, and other communications from members. So just now I've received lateness from Samina Nagara. Is there others? And she's just there. There she is. There she popped in right there. Any others at all? No, thank you. Do any members have anything to declare to the members? No. Okay, brilliant. So we'll move on to agenda item number 2 now. We have before us the minutes of the 13th of May 2024 committee meetings. Note all of those present will have been part of this meeting, but for those who weren't here, just to make sure that we've got the accuracy raised on a particular set of minutes. So can we then just agree the minutes for the 13th of May 2024? Agreed. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Okay, we move on to agenda item number 3. NHS Community Services in Hounslow. In my time as chair, Overeem Scrutiny has frequently looked beyond the council to consider other issues that resonate with local residents. We've engaged with Metropolitan Police, with housing associations, and with the NHS by the way of example, to look at topics that affect local lives. We are doing so again tonight with representatives, yep, there we are, of the NHS present to detail changes to community health services in Hounslow that were implemented in the summer. West London NHS Trust is now responsible for local community health services, and we have with us a number of colleagues from NHS. A few missing, but we do have Chris here. We should have sort of Jane and Toby, I believe. But welcome to you, please. So just introduce yourself, just for us committee members as well as people just watching us online. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Chris Hilton. Thank you for the invitation to return to the committee. I am the Chief Operating Officer in West London NHS Trust.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so the committee have the opportunity to engage with the papers that you provided. So we have been sort of asked to note the presentation, but of course we'll always have some sort of good discussions with that as well. So without further ado, if I could just ask you just to present your report, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We had planned this presentation as a joint presentation between commissioner and provider. So I apologise that my commissioning colleague Toby appears to be unfortunately delayed. I'm happy to speak to his part of the presentation, but it's probably helpful for me to reflect that slides 1 to 7 in your pack reflect the decisions made by the respective commissioners of the services, and then the subsequent part of the pack represent my role as the new provider, the incoming provider of community health services here in Hounslow, and some of the observations and assurances that I wish to give the committee an opportunity to scrutinise. I think you will all be familiar with the community health services in the borough. Community health services form one of the tiers of care that we provide to local residents in the borough. And for the past over a decade, these have been provided by an organisation known as Hounslow and Richmond Community Healthcare NHS Trust. I've been invited to share the slides which you have seen in the pack, and I won't go through them in full detail one by one. But I know that prior to West London's involvement in this process, commissioners were working very closely with Hounslow and Richmond Community Healthcare, who have developed a strategic case to merge their organisation into Kingston Hospital NHS Foundation Trust. That strategic case was developed over a couple of years, and I believe that my predecessor in managing the Hounslow services may have presented to this committee previously about that merger and acquisition process. That discussion around the acquisition of Hounslow and Richmond Community Healthcare as an organisation into Kingston and into the Southwest London integrated care system triggered a discussion to think about a future delivery vehicle for the Hounslow services, and a consensus decision between the provider, the outgoing provider, and the NHS Commissioner, the Integrated Care Board for Northwest London, that the services would benefit from being aligned with a provider in the Northwest London system, along with Hounslow as a borough. That logic was around seeking a new provider which would work along the pathways for the patient care that's provided to residents in this borough. And you can see that a number of decisions were made. There are two commissioners involved in these services. One, of course, is the Integrated Care Board, who commissions the majority of the services, but also a proportion of services commissioned by Hounslow Council were also aligned to that commissioning decision. There were a number of risks in the process in terms of needing to have a tight timescale for identifying a new provider, and also a number of sensitivities relating to changes in configuration and a desire to try and simplify the provision of care for local residents. The commissioners chose to undertake a commissioning decision under what is now known as the provider selection regime. And that was to to invite providers who were suitable to bid and to test their suitability, and having that suitability being tested to make an award through the provider selection regime process. Both the ICB and the Council initiated this process at the start of this calendar year. There were a number of formal gateways, including informing the market of an intent to follow that process, seeking alternative viable providers, and I understand that no alternative suitable providers other than my own organisation took part in the process. We were notified that we were the preferred provider in the late spring, and then worked at pace to support transition with a target date of the 1st of July. And that was an extremely collaborative process with Hounslow and Richmond and partners in Kingston Hospital, and carefully managed in partnership with both the Council and the ICB as the responsible commissioners. So this summarises some of the things that I've told you about the bid that we submitted as West London Trust. We responded to the invitation to tender as we have been a provider of community health services in a neighbouring borough for over 5 years. We were informed in late April, and we stood up a steering group for which I was the board executive lead to oversee the mobilisation of the services across from HRCH into West London Trust. And we took a go, no-go decision to ensure that we were assured about the safety of the transfer of the services in late June ahead of a 1st of July transfer. There are a few compromises that needed to be made because of the pace of the transition, which I'm happy to explain, and we continue to work in partnership between HRCH and Kingston for a small number of areas, which we're gradually tidying up now post-mobilisation. But the impacts of further delay, particularly on the workforce in these services who had experienced a considerable period of uncertainty, was felt to outweigh the need to move the services over to a new North West London provider. And this slide, on slide 7, outlines some of the interim arrangements that we put in place. The key ones were around information technology. We are currently in process of installing new network infrastructure to all of the Hounslow buildings, and some of that is under the control of the fibre optic cable provider, as it would be with home broadband, and that is delaying our ability to replace all of the IT equipment and issue new devices to staff. Just to remind you about West London Trust. So you I hope, are familiar with my organisation as the provider of mental health in this borough. We're a provider of mental health community and primary care, as well as having a number of specialist services. We've been delivering physical health and community services since 2015, and I was previously the clinical lead and then subsequently the clinical director for those services. So I'm very familiar with the work that we've done elsewhere in Ealing and in Hammersmith and Fulham, and recently, before this transfer, also looking after respiratory and oxygen pathways in Hounslow. In fact, there is a typo in this pack for which I apologise. We now employ post-transfer 6,500 staff, and we deliver services in all of those care settings. This is purely for illustration. We currently structure our services into mental health. And you can see my line reports, 5 clinical director colleagues, all of whom are clinicians, on the left-hand side of that diagram. In the center, you can see the green community health services supported by my colleague, Dr. Claire Dillon. I hope, or you may be familiar with Claire Miller and Ros King, who are well known to the Hounslow system and have now transferred over, overseeing the work of the Hounslow Community Healthcare Services. And to the right of the diagram, some of our specialist services also clinically led. I was asked in preparation for this to just highlight a number of key domains, and I won't dwell on all of the contents in the pack, but just to think about workforce, we were particularly concerned about managing the transition of staff from one organisation to another, particularly a small and extremely highly regarded and CQC rated good organisation like Hounslow and Richmond Community Healthcare. I like to think that West London Trust, although we're a larger organisation, has a similar values base. We certainly have similar staff survey scores. We transitioned 756 individuals, not all of whom work full-time, into the trust from HRCH on a TUPE transfer arrangement, protecting their terms and conditions. They came into the trust on the 1st of July. We then had a series of extremely well-attended welcome events for about 100, 150 staff at a time over a 10-day period, attended by executives, some system partners, and all of those staff, to induct them into our organisation, but also to assure them around the changes that had occurred. They have been integrated into the part of the trust that I am responsible for, and I was most anxious about some of the technicalities of the TUPE transfer, and I was pleased to say that we paid all of the staff correctly at the end of July, with the exception of 1 or 2 for whom the information we'd been given about their bank details was incorrect, and they were paid a day later. So that was the biggest anxiety in the transfer that would have significantly impacted upon our new workforce engagement. The second thing that I was most concerned about, of course, is the care that these services provide to residents. And it may surprise you to know that on the 1st of July, we transferred over just over 500,000 records of staff, of patients, and that reflected care for around just below 50,000 unique residents of this borough. And their care transitioned without any change to the services that they would have experienced. I've shown you a diagram there that looks at the contractual performance of a number of the subdivisions within the service, and I hope what you can see for the first 4 months of the financial year, the first 3 under the previous provider and the 4th under us, is that we have maintained stable and predictable performance in the amount of activity that's been delivered despite the disturbance of the changes. I've also provided you a brief extract here, which you can read in more detail in our trust's regular public board reports. This is an extract from our integrated performance report, looking at the performance in July of some of the key indicators by which we measure our services. And I guess what you can see is that we are performing around 80% of the individuals referred to our pediatrics pathways and to our community MSK pathways are nearly 100% seen within NHS constitutional standards. So that's the 18-week referral to treatment time. There's a specific small service that is reported separately because it's a diagnostic pathway, and audiology is the one diagnostic pathway that transferred. They're performing at 99.4%, which considerably exceeds their target. You can see that we have a large chunk of activity delivered in patients' homes, and our district nurses divide up the priority of the referrals they receive into 0 to 3 days, 4 to 7 days, or 8+ days, depending on the performance required. And what you can see is that of the total number of referrals received, the proportions that are seen within those categories, which mirrors the performance that I observe in the Ealing services, for which I'm also responsible. I happen also to chair the Urgent Community Response Board for London, overseeing the crisis response services in the community across all 32 boroughs. So I'm particularly interested in urgent community response. In Hounslow, we call that the Integrated Community Response Service, ICRS. The national target is for services to respond to 70% of referrals within 2 hours of referral, and Hounslows performs in July at 92%. We are commissioned by the council to deliver universal services to children, and in particular, one of the key metrics that we wish to track as a board in respect of this is the number of new mums and babies that receive a visit after birth within 14 days. This was performing below target before we took over the service in June, due to various issues related to some staff absences, was only 2/3 seen within 14 days. This improved. I can't take responsibility for the improvement, but despite the transition into West London Trust, this improved in July to 83%, and in fact in August it's gone up to 89%. So that's on an improving trajectory. I'll move on quickly just to quality. We have we've inherited from Hounslow a really robust system of collecting feedback from service users. They have paper-based and text-based feedback from across the services. 94% of 1,000 responses in July were scored good or very good, with a very small number scoring poorly, which was very similar to the performance prior to the transfer. And we also have incorporated quality monitoring into our West London Trust system using an electronic system called Datix. And you can see some of the rates of recording across the services. This will reflect all kinds of things, from my computer didn't work to a serious incident related to a patient. So I'm pleased to say that we didn't have any serious patient safety incidents reported during that period. The financial values of these contracts in annual terms is approximately £50 million. West London Trust's total annual turnover is approximately 500. I'm pleased to report that despite incurring a number of mobilisation costs, we were able to report no adverse impact on the Trust's overall financial position as a result of this transaction. And we're working with the ICB to see if we can further recoup some of the mobilisation costs that we have incurred. I've mentioned already some of the wobbles, and they related to IT provision, and we are on track to transfer most of this by the end of October. There's a procurement system that has transferred into the Trust this month, and then making sure that we are ensuring that our staff, well, firstly, that West London Trust's corporate services recognise our new colleagues, and in the absence of some of our online portals, because they're still on the old IT at the moment, making sure that they can access corporate services in a timely way. I would say that's probably the largest point of friction, I think, for the transferred staff, is just IT, which we have plans to resolve, and I think are on track too. I hope that's a reasonable summary. I'll pause the slide presentation, but I'm very happy to take any questions.
No, thank you so much for that report. It sounds like you've done really well. So well done. Well done to you and your team. So you know, despite the time frame that you had as well, and trying to integrate all the systems, one of the things for me is just because it's already on the report. So you did have some risks there. Have you sort of mitigated all of those risks post and after? I mean, how did you do it so well?
Thank you. I have to say, I think one of the things that I should put on record is that we are inheriting extremely well-run services, and I would definitely wish to pay credit to my predecessor, Anne Stratton, who I'm sure is familiar to this committee, who has been incredibly supportive and caring of the managing this transition. I think we were very keen as an organisation, and my teams internally in West London Trust, to take a lift and shift approach to this in the first instance, because these are well-run services. We're not in the process of seeking to wildly perturb them initially. Or indeed at all. What we wished to do was inherit them and work with the staff who are working in the services to continue the transformation work that they have on track. So I definitely pay credit to the predecessor organisation, and I take seriously the legacy that I've inherited.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, great. So I'm going to just pass it to now our committee for the points of clarification or any other sort of questions. We'll talk about it broadly afterwards, but is there any committee members that would want to pose a question to Chris? Councillor Tuck?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, very comprehensive report, a lot of detail in there. Just a small question around the home visits for new births. You said the home visits within first 14 days, it has improved from June to July. But I see a big decrease in the new birth visits after 14 days, which has gone down from 32.6% to 16.8%. Is there any specific reason?
Sorry, just to explain the data that we're reporting there. What our target is, of course, is to see every family and every new birth. So we report separately those that were seen within the target 2 weeks, but also the proportion that were seen after that target, which together should add up to nearly 100%. So we're hoping that the second number shrinks as the first number grows, in order to demonstrate that we are seeing all of the families.
Councillor Gould, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for presenting a report. In the report, you mentioned there is a rapid improvement of the performance. So could you please explain, is the performance measured by the internal system, or you just there any mechanism to check how your performance is measured by the external or the internal system, please?
Sure. So we these are key highlight metrics that I take up to board level. Obviously, we've got a huge number of additional metrics that we measure at team level in every team across not only the Hounslow services, but all of the other services in our organisation. We are with one exception, which is the wheelchair service. We are using a electronic record system known as System 1. That's a shared electronic patient record with primary care and with some mental health services to support sharing of clinical information. It also captures referral information and activity information every time a patient is seen. It has timestamps and various other data recorded within it. The business information team is then able to use that data to help me understand, are we seeing, what numbers of people are we seeing, and are they being seen in the appropriate timeframes? At the current time, as of months July, August, and September, we are working with the business intelligence team in Kingston. So they still have the IT, and they get all of the data passed to Kingston Hospital and then passed back to me to ensure that I've got visibility of the performance of the services we've inherited. From October, we'll have direct visibility of that when the System 1 units transfer to us. And all of this data gets plugged into West London Trust's data warehouse, and a whole series of reports and dashboards are generated for me to see the performance by team, by primary care network, etc.
Councillor Mir, please.
Yeah, my question, during the transition period, will the patient care be have any impact on patient care?
So our intention was absolutely not to. So because we've inherited all of the staff, almost all of the staff that were working in the teams previously, patients should be experiencing the same care provided to the same model by the same practitioners, and and those individuals in almost all cases are almost up to me, are managed by the same managers. So in fact, patients, I hope, are not experiencing any significant changes to the care they're provided. We have communicated with patients broadly, informing them that Hounslow and Richmond Community Healthcare NHS Trust is no longer the responsible provider, but that West London Trust is through our Hounslow Community Healthcare Division.
So when the data is changed, will that will have any effect on, will that come any effect on this? Like basically when they transfer the record, how will this have any effect on it?
I hope not. So in fact, the way the electronic record system works, all of the patient's records are stored in chunks called units of data. So for instance, we have a district nursing unit, we have a health visiting unit, we have a physiotherapy unit. And rather than go through a complex migration process of moving each individual data point, we actually just move the whole unit. So all of the data it's almost like borrowing a friend's computer. We all in place, all of the templates, all of the information.
Thank you for that. If there's no other questions from committee members, we can sort of just have a bit of a discussion on sort of moving forward recommendations, really, or what we want from OSC. So one of those things are, of course, performance. We love our performance and charts and all the rest of it. So with regards to information, and I do appreciate you sort of just started up, but would you be sort of giving some of that information that you've given us earlier on a sort of quarterly, half yearly, yearly basis? What would be feasible for you guys?
We generate the information, and certainly from October we'll be generating on a daily basis. I suppose that this committee does not want to see it that frequently. We publish it publicly in our integrated performance report as a trust quarterly, and I'm very happy to bring it here or to any other council committees at request.
So I guess one of the recommendations, as long as committee members are happy, that you just share it with council, that quarterly report. Yeah. And the only other thing was mitigation with local residents. That's really it. You know, is there any downfall? Is there anything that will affect residents going forward? Do you feel?
I mean, I feel bound to say I hope not, and I believe not. On the contrary, one of the things that it's nice that I'm sitting next to the council officer at this time is the work that we are doing jointly in the health and social care integration program within the council. I think we are working very closely as a trust with the council and other partners in the borough. But one of the things that as a clinician myself, I'm really excited about is the possibility, where appropriate, to improve the integration of care, not only between NHS and local authority services, but also between physical health and mental health. And there are certain communities within this contract that I haven't run this report yet for Hounslow. When I took over the services in Ealing, we inherited around 30,000 patients, and of them, 40% were already known to our organisation because they were receiving psychological therapy, they were seeing our CAMS services, they were under dementia services or mental health services. So I really hope we can start to join up the experience of care for those individuals.
Yes, Stephen, of course.
It's just to reflect, Chair. I think it's easy sometimes for us to criticise. It's less easy sometimes to recognise. So I think just to reflect, I think what you've heard tonight and what Chris has said, any transfer of services at this level is always anxiety-ridden about the potential for it to go wrong. We operate in incredibly pressurised times for our staff. I have been, and Chris might fall off his chair when I use this word, I've been impressed by the commitment from both HRCH as it was and West London Trust and the staff in the middle of it in Hounslow Community Services to enabling this transfer. We are absolutely enmeshed with the same patient cohort within services because they manage some of our services. We commission some of theirs. There was nothing happened that brought any concern on the date of transfer or to this day. And in fact, we've continued that joint working without hesitation. And I am absolutely confident that IT, I look to Mark and I don't want to criticise Mark, but IT is always one of those things that causes us a little bit of a hiccup, particularly when you're transferring from one organisation to another, not internally, Mark. But those I think are minor in a sense. The key thing is from us with the common core of people that we serve, nothing went wrong. And that's the key thing. So it's a real credit to Chris and his organisation and to HRCH. And I will, again, I think, reflect what Chris said. And a personal thank you to Anne Stratton, who was the former Chief Operating Officer of HRCH, for her commitment to see her staff transfer across, who she left behind because she stayed with Kingston, but actually she committed to the end and beyond. So I think we need to give her some credit in this because she made this transfer work with colleagues. So I think we've been well impressed, and all credit to Chris and co.
Councillor Bath, of course, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to say anything, but I ought to, because obviously I've recently taken over this portfolio and health and social care integration is included in it. So obviously this work had started before I'd taken the responsibility, but we did have the pleasure of Chris coming to the Health and Wellbeing Board, and I chair that. And he gave us an overview of the transfer, and I was quite astounded actually at how complex it all is. And actually I was very reassured. Chris did get lots of questions, but we were very reassured that actually it's all going very well. And I think, our priority was what would happen to the services for our residents, and I don't feel that they're at risk or being compromised at all. And I think that's really good. So yeah.
No, thank you so much for that. Okay, I mean, look, so all it is really is just some of that sort of performance data really, and a massive well done. I mean, that's all we can really do, and to all the colleagues involved in the transition. As long as all the committee is happy with that, we will just sort of recommend it and kind of move on. Is that all right? Yeah, there we are. All good. Well done, Chris. But yes, we now sort of move on now to agenda item number 4. I'll give you a moment if you want to leave. No problem at all. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, absolutely. I love those stories. It's just so fantastic. They're absolutely brilliant. Right. Okay. So we've got to move on to our second substantive item on the agenda. Agenda item number 4. This is the council tax support scheme. We now turn to proposed changes in the council tax support scheme. Local government finance is something the committee returns to on a regular basis, whilst many commentators highlight the degree to which council tax is overworked. It has been a feature of the local authority landscape since 1993. Council tax support schemes are locally designed and exist to provide some form of financial support for low-income households or to those on benefits that would otherwise struggle to meet their council tax bill. Hounslow intends to consult on changes to its own scheme insofar as it affects working age adults, and this evening the committee are being asked to consider the comments on the content of the consultation, sufficiency and consultation engagement arrangements, as well as suggest amendments to the consultation. We are joined this evening by Councillor Rajwat, Leader of the Council, Robert Meldrum, Director of Finance. Welcome to you all. Councillor Rajwat, may I ask you to introduce your report, please?
Chair, committee, thank you very much. Great to be back here today. So we are doing a bit of a double act this evening. So I will just set some context, some levers, and the sort of why we are looking to consult on changes. And I should be clear from the outset, this is Cabinet have agreed to go out to consultation. It isn't live yet. We wanted to come here first and consult with Overview and Scrutiny before we made it live. And then Rob will be able to answer some of the more technical questions. I will say from the outset, it is a technical area. It's something that takes quite a bit to get your head around. So there may well be questions that committee have outside of this evening's meeting, and both myself and Rob are very happy to answer any questions that may flow. So just to set a bit of context, Chair, you kind of alluded to the fact that council tax has been around since 1993. Up until 2013, the government administered council tax support. In 2013, as part of the austerity agenda, that burden shifted to local authorities, and it was up to local authorities to design their own scheme. The funding that the government were giving at that point for council tax support did not transfer over. So this scheme is funded by the local authority. So we fund that every year, and I'll come back to that in just a second. Just to be absolutely clear, council tax support is a discount on council tax up to a level. So residents can get a discount depending on their circumstances, and that is tested by an application form that goes to our revenue benefits team at Liberata. Just for the avoidance of any doubt, pensioners are fully protected. So any changes that we propose do not impact on pensioners whatsoever. This is only working age claimants who are affected by any changes that we make. And again, in terms of context, the cost of council tax support since 2019-20 has increased by approximately £6 million. But that needs to be put in the context of funding, the funding envelope from government decreasing by about 100 million since 2013. So we need to keep reviewing the scheme to make sure that it remains affordable as well. So what are the mechanisms that we have in order to better reflect current need? Well, we can look at entitlement criteria. So we can assess household income, savings, and personal circumstances. One or any combination of these, of the resident and their household. And the criteria may also differ according to the makeup of households, or we can look at the level of support provided, and we have discretion on the amount that we award to residents entitled to the council tax support scheme, and can offer different levels of support according to the specific circumstances of the household. So why are we looking to consult on changes? So at a broad headline, and we can get into this in the discussion, obviously, the current scheme no longer reflects the current needs of Hounslows population and needs updating to better reflect residents' needs. Things have changed. We've had austerity, then we've had COVID, we've had a cost of living crisis. Things have changed in very quick, rapid succession. So single household couples and those with or without children all receive the same level of support currently. So this is an opportunity to be much more targeted in where we offer our support. Also, the committee will be aware about 2 years ago, was it? We did review the scheme. Well, it was a year ago now, actually. We reviewed the scheme, and the idea there was that a large cohort receiving housing benefit would be migrating over to universal credit. The government paused that in the context of COVID, which I fully understand. We now need to restart that work because that cohort is now moving over to universal credit. We want to introduce an annual uplift to income bands. So currently the bands that we set haven't been adjusted to reflect the recent period of higher inflation and the current circumstances. So we need to have that flexibility to be able to flex the system as the economic picture changes. And of course, we can't ignore the fact, and this came up in the debate on Tuesday at Council, we have got a £30 million shortfall in the budget. We have to make sure that the scheme is affordable in the context of the overall budget, but also in terms of the challenges that we face. And as an administration, we wouldn't want to make any changes, but we have to be very alive to the fact that there is a financial challenge, and therefore everything is on the table. And a scheme that currently costs £27.5 million a year absolutely needs to be looked at and made sure. But for me personally, putting a little bit of politics in here, I'm looking at making sure that we are targeting the scheme to those that most need it, households larger households, carers, to make sure that they are supported as we get to the tail end, hopefully, of the cost of living crisis. So that's the context and the why. Rob, over to you.
Thank you. So I'll try and describe the changes that are being proposed in the consultation to the scheme. So at the moment we've got a 5 income band scheme where a person's income up to £2,000 is assessed and they'll fall into one of these bands, and that band then tells them what pound contribution they will need to make to their council tax liability. So the amount that someone on council tax support pays bears no relation to the council tax due on the property they live in. What we're proposing to move to is admittedly a more complex appraisal system of people's income. So we'll still have 5 income bands, but the amount of income that allows you to sit in a particular band will depend on the makeup of your household as well as the income. So the more people in your household, the higher the amount of income you can earn and still get the higher level of support. Then each of those bands will then, whichever band you fall into, will dictate the discount that you receive on your council tax support. And so that will be a percentage reduction against your council tax instead of the band determining how much you pay in pound value. So it's quite a significant shift in that regard. The amount that someone pay, or the lowest amount that anyone would pay, would be 10% of their council tax under these proposals, and that would be for people receiving carers allowance. So they would receive a 90% discount if they receive carers allowance. Everybody else, the highest amount of support that they would receive is a 75% discount, which means that anybody that's currently paying nothing and isn't receiving carers allowance would be required to pay 25% of their council tax liability from April 25 if this was introduced. What is also proposed alongside the changes to the council tax support scheme is to introduce a support fund for a period of time in order to help people cope with the transition between the scheme. There's 2 options presented in the paper to Cabinet seeking to go to consultation. One of those is quite a simple option where someone would apply saying they needed support, and the support that would be provided would be to remove the remaining amount of council tax that's provided to them. And the second option offers a more comprehensive package of support where it would have a look at, operate quite similar to the Household Support Fund does at the moment, I guess, have a look at a person's financial situation and try and help them out with significant utilities arrears that they would never be able to sustain the payments against, and kind of hopefully get them onto a sustainable financial position going forward so they can better manage their finances in the future. I think those are the key features of the proposals in the scheme. The consultation is being supported, so we brought in a dedicated officer to help with the engagement process going round for the consultation. There'll be a present at all of the community hubs where people can talk about the consultation, and there's specific outreach engagement going on to a very long list of community groups that are likely to be supporting people who are receiving council tax support.
Yeah, and just to add to that, obviously the committee has the sort of engagement plan. Be very happy to take questions or comments on that. This is a good opportunity to really test out our radical overhaul of community engagement and how we fundamentally engage with our residents through this process, because it is complex and people will have specific questions around their circumstances. So using some support that we've got in, there is on the consultation pages a dedicated calculator where people can put in their individual circumstances and find out whether they'll be better or worse off as a result of these changes, to be able to then respond to the consultation. Nothing, whilst there is a scheme in front of you to consider, we are very alive to the fact that this is a big change for residents. We've gone from potentially one of the most generous council tax schemes to one that is still generous, in my opinion, but obviously not what it once was. So people will need to understand that and be able to respond to that. And we are absolutely alive to that, and look to the responses that we received to try and reflect that within the final scheme that comes forward as part of the budget in February. And we are in officers, I've instructed officers to have conversations with the Liberator, who will do a lot of the administration should the scheme go forward as is, or whatever scheme goes forward in terms of support. So it is not the case that we set the budget in February, bills start arriving and people find out that they're suddenly liable for council tax, and there's no support there from Liberator and our partners there, as well as Community Solutions as well. So I hope that gives you an overview of the scheme. I appreciate it's high level, but you've got the detail in front of you in the engagement plan. Very happy to take any questions or comments.
No, thank you so much for that report, Councillor Radrat. We do actually have quite a lot of questions, I'm sure. So I'll start firstly with Councillor Hemsley, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And this is just on the consultation at the moment, which I think is right, because it's not a foregone conclusion and there is a chance for people to have that engagement. I guess that's actually my first question, because I, for my sins, read all the papers for this meeting. And page 5 of the engagement plan states that the consultation will launch late September and run until the 22nd of November. But page 10 of the forward plan says the final decision on this will be taken on the 12th of November. So that's obviously 10 days before the consultation closes. Is there a reason for that? I'm sure there's a mistake somewhere, but...
That's an error on the forward plan. That report should have been removed.
All right, brilliant. And I guess my next follow-on question from that is, when will that final decision be taken, and how long will there be between the consultation closing, consultation analysis, and that decision?
So ultimately, the final decision will be taken with the budget in February, because we have to go through that process of looking at the results. We want to do it properly. And the date of implementation after the budget is when council tax bills start dropping in April.
All right, brilliant. So there's like a 6-week period between the end of the consultation and the decision. All right. On to the actual consultation itself then. And this is my second one. I think I've got 2 in a row, haven't I? Yeah, all right. So Appendix 1 talks about in-person consultation, which is so important. And I'm really glad that that's featured in that appendix. I noticed a bit of a geographic gap in that in-person consultation. So there's 1 in Hounslow, 2 in Feltham, 1 in Cranford, 1 in Brentford. They're the community hub locations. That's 4 in the west of the borough, 1 in the east of the borough. Will there be an alternative to those in-person consultations for people in Chiswick, for example, or Osterley or Isleworth, who perhaps couldn't get to the one in Brentford and don't want to travel all the way across to Feltham or Hounslow to have that in-person consultation if they are digitally excluded, for example?
So a very good point, Councillor Ramsey. I'll take that away. Yeah, and we'll look at how we can do that differently. The community hubs kinds of make sense because they're already in place, but nonetheless, I take your point entirely.
I think I've got one further along, so I'll hand back to you, Chair. I don't want to dominate it too much.
I'll split that up a little bit. Okay. Councillor Tuck, please, if you could have your question.
Thank you, Chair. My question was again regarding to consultation, and Councillor Emsley has partly asked the question about whether we'll have the representatives at the community hubs and the area forums to make people aware of the consultation process, because often what happens is when we send the consultation letters, people don't even open them. And when a scheme is implemented, they come back to the council, say, oh, the council didn't consult us, whereas we had sent the letters, they didn't read the letters. So what can we do to make sure that people are aware? So probably community hubs and the area forums have some representatives there.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right to make that point. We'd like everyone to try and read them, but also there's a conversation more fundamentally going on with Liberata in the period of the consultation. If someone does call up for an inquiry, for example, on their council tax, or there's an inquiry on the council tax bill, that's a good way to make people aware. We'll also be using Hounslow Matters. There's an edition that falls, I think, smack bang in the middle, from memory, of the consultation period. So that's a good way to get that across. I mean, in essence, we don't want to hide this away. This is something that needs to be front and center, that people need to see, understand, and be able to engage with. Even if they're not affected, they may well have an opinion. We're also using the voluntary sector as well, because we appreciate that some people will use voluntary organizations rather than community hubs, and that's absolutely fine as long as they're aware of it and how to access the consultation. That's also a job well done. But I would say more broadly to the committee and any councillor, actually, if they feel something is missing or we haven't approached an organization that perhaps works with people in the borough, by all means tell us. We're very happy to take that on board and see what we can do to support.
Thank you. So my question really does sort of overlap with Councillor Hemsley's as well, further down. So if you had all the time in the world, and we always think that, don't we? What would be the ideal consultation timeline for you for this?
Now that's a question, Chair. It's trying to strike a balance, isn't it? We've learned some lessons from the last time we consulted. There was criticism because the last time we consulted on this, potentially it was running into Christmas, and that's a difficult period for people anyway. So we've learned the lessons from that. We've also we were accused, although I don't accept this accusation, the last time we reviewed the system, the scheme, that we didn't spend enough time analysing the results. So we built in as much time as possible. Ultimately, we need to get to April 25 when this is implemented, and the budget report before then. So I think we've tried to be as generous as possible, and part of that is actually the easy thing to have done, if I'm being very frank and honest, is cabinet decision happens, we go straight out to consultation. Actually, I wanted to have this conversation first, because with the best will in the world, we may have missed something. Well, we've already identified something that we've missed. So, it's a good conversation to have anyway.
Thank you. Before I do come to you two, can I just have Councillor Nagra just ask her question, please?
Thank you, Chair. I just would like to know that is a consultation when it's going to be start. I just want to know that what is the a best way, what is included in your consultation, which way you're going to be consulted with residents. I just want to do little bit brief in this one, please. I want to know that.
So on the face of it, the scheme, so there will be a description of what the current scheme is, what that looks like, what the new scheme will look like, how many people currently access the current scheme, how many people potentially could be affected by the new scheme. And as I mentioned earlier, that bespoke calculator that allows people to click on and say, right, these are my circumstances, this is my income, these are my outgoings, this is my household composition, and that will produce a set of data. Indicative, it will be as close as we can get without being specific, because a lot of that data is actually provided by the DWP anyway, to give them an indication of fundamentally, one, are you going to be paying council tax now or not? And if so, how much likely you're going to be able to pay? And that will give you an indication. And then there's plenty of support. There'll be telephone lines, email, area forums, community hubs, places where people can go and talk about their circumstances and understand the scheme in greater detail.
Councillor Hemsley, do you want to still sort of ask your question, or was that sufficient with?
I've got a question as that. Councillor Radwan's laughing. He knows. I've got to get it.
All right, last one.
Last one. I
Okay,
promise. Last one. It sort of actually does lead on quite nicely from those two, though, because we talked about the the way in which we're consulting, the way in which we're making sure that we're going out to people. I guess my question, Councillor Rajawat, is what does a good level of consultation look like? So we get to the 22nd of November. Do we have an objective for the number of people who are currently benefiting from CTS to have responded to that? Is there almost like a lower level where it's like, actually, this consultation hasn't worked, maybe we need to change things up a bit? And is there a way to mitigate the worst if it does come back on the 22nd of November and only 5% of people in receipt of CTS have actually responded because they haven't got the letter, because they haven't opened it, whatever it might be?
So to put it into context, Councillor Ramsey, the last time we consulted on changes, we got about 800 responses, I think it was, which is a fair number in terms of the number that normally respond to consultations. But by way of reassurance, the principles are in, I think, the second appendix to your report, so I'll take that as read. Officers and I will be looking at the level of responses, and we've got to be agile to it. So whilst I wouldn't want to say I want 800 or I want 1,000, it's just impossible to say. If it does look like there is a low response to this, then yes, absolutely, we'll have to look at that. And I suppose having that slight buffer when we would be analysing the results is probably a good thing in that context if we need to do something slightly different.
Thank you. Councillor Butt, please.
Thank you, Chair. How will this scheme impact local businesses and services? Please.
It won't really have any impact on local businesses. It's for local individuals. I mean, in terms of services, obviously the discount on council tax, but the principle there, just to articulate that, is we had long discussions in cabinet when we were sort of thinking about this scheme, and we think it's really important that everyone has a stake in the borough, and even if it's 10%, paying in 10% or 25%, as the case may be, it means that you've got a stake in the borough, and you can then feel like you've paid in a little bit so that you can criticize us or compliment us if you so wish. But in terms of local businesses, it won't have an impact on businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Gould, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking one step ahead. If after the consultations we implement this new scheme, so how much we are saving by the new scheme? Just simple.
No, wait. Can we just stick with the consultation questions, not afterwards? I know we're jumping ahead, but could you just have a question for the actual consultation, please?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
So, I mean, as I say...
Sorry, I'm just rephrasing my question. My question was because if we just give awareness for the new scheme and how much will be beneficial for the council or the management, and on top of that, how we can give the awareness this scheme will be affecting people, how will we work on it? That's it.
Yeah, so the consultation will be very honest and open. Some people will get a greater degree of support than they have done previously. Some, unfortunately, will lose out on some of their support, but everyone will pay something towards it. In terms of your earlier question, in the context of the £30 million we've got to find in order to balance the budget, this potentially, as a scheme as it stands, and I don't want to say that this is the final scheme because we don't know that until we've gone through the consultation, will save roughly about £4 million, which is a significant chunk of money in the grand scheme of things. Yeah.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Tutt, please.
Thank you, Chair. Slightly linked to the report itself, I see a risk in the report that council may not have adequate internal resources available to implement the scheme. Does that go for the consultation as well, or it's only for the implementation of the scheme?
So I think it's an honest assessment of what could go wrong in terms of both consultation and the actual implementation. So you'll recall Rob talked about an additional resource just focused in. That's right, isn't it? It's just focused in on this on the scheme. But we are, prior to going out to consultation, and these conversations have already started in the cabinet process to agree going out to consultation. A lot of the work will be done by Liberata, and they have been tasked with making sure that they are adequately resourced, not only to do the administration around the consultation and responses, but also the inquiries that will flow from the consultation as well. In terms of community solutions as well, they are aware that this will attract potentially quite a bit of interest. And so we're making sure we've got enough staff, but it's about being agile. So I think what we'll probably find is in the initial days of the consultation, you won't see as many staff because you probably won't have as many people coming through the door. That will probably ramp up, but we are able to flex the support that's available.
Thank you for that. Councillor Yates, and then yourself there.
Hiya, sorry, I'm probably jumping the gun a bit as well with this question, but we will be involved with the consultation with our residents at some point. So I think it's, we need to know some answers. When you were explaining it, you were saying about they'll be able to go online and find out how much council tax potentially they will have to pay. Obviously, at the moment, that's just to give them an idea. But going forward, is that how the scheme will be worked out for them with council tax? Will it be in case of having to go online or fill out a form to put in their income? And so how will it be worked out? Because obviously, at the moment, you've only got 1-2 people on the council tax. How are you going to work out how many people are in the household?
Yeah, so it's a good question, Councillor Yates, and Rob may want to come in with some of the detail, but a lot of the data is held by the Department of Work and Pensions. So a lot of that data comes down when we calculate things like universal credit and stuff. So it's making sure as part of this that people are updating their circumstances when it comes to universal credit. But one of the benefits, I suppose, of the banding system is when you're in a band, small increases or decreases to earned income won't necessarily affect. It's when you get bigger changes in them once your entitlement is worked out is where there need to be a reassessment. Have I got that right? Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that we're trying to introduce with this is that we will be able to use only the data that DWP collect when someone applies for universal credit, and we get a feed of that. So we should be able to update and recognise that people are entitled to council tax support quickly and get them access to it.
The calculator that will be online, will that be available for always, or is this just during the consultation period?
So there's currently a version of the calculator there at the moment for people to see what they're entitled to currently for the current year. Then we've got a special one to show what the difference will be in the scheme. And then if we take those proposals forward, I expect we'll update the calculator that's there at the moment so people can check their entitlement. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Yates. Councillor Miana.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You had explained that how the consultation method has been used, but what about if there's any opportunity for the resident to give their feedback and how this feedback is collected?
So there'll be the traditional methods on the Let's Talk consultation website. People can respond to that. There'll be paper copies available as well. If someone accesses the services by a phone call to Liberata or to Community Solutions, our staff will be available to take down any feedback that they want to give through that as well. But again, if there is something else that you think we're missing, please do tell us.
Just one more question. You have mentioned that changes would not have any impact on pensioners. But what about other vulnerable groups like disabled, single parent, or jobless people?
So the scheme only offers specific protection or specific additional protection to people receiving carers allowance in the proposed scheme. Everybody else would be treated the same. We did look through all of the options about which cohorts you could support, and in the main, people who are receiving disabilities benefits and things are receiving compensation to allow them to be able to meet the cost of council tax. So it didn't feel appropriate to take that into this scheme.
So there is help out there if someone gets affected by the changes.
Yeah, I think the vulnerable groups you've mentioned would be receiving additional benefits on top of the standard universal credit that might be.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that and answering those questions. There's a lot there clearly, of concern. We do have certainly. Look, so that sort of wraps up all the questions, unless there is sort of the final question that somebody wants to throw to Councillor Rajwat. If not, we sort of go to discussion stage. So this is where we'll talk about it, and hopefully we can come up with some sort of recommendations, provided Malcolm and Councillor Rajwat say, "Oh, well, I'm not sure. Yes, okay, we will look into it or whatever." Hopefully you can look into it, to the cabinet as well. So there we go. Okay, so I ask the committee. You are the members. What do you think? Yeah.
Is this the point where we suggest recommendation? Right. Okay. I'm new. Sorry. To me, I think the two clear, not gaps, but the two clear parts that we've uncovered tonight are one, that widening of the geography of the in-person consultation. So making sure that there are resources for in-person consultations in the east of the borough as well as the west of the borough. I think that's probably my number one recommendation for this report. I think also Councillor Rajwat touched on a couple of times that ramping up of resources in the middle of the consultation in case there is a lack of responses or we're not quite getting the responses from the right areas. So maybe a recommendation could be some sort of mid-consultation review looking at how many people have responded, what the percentage of people currently in receipt of CTS are that's responded, and maybe coming up with a strategy to mitigate problems that we can see maybe around the first week, second week of November, to make sure in those final weeks we are reaching out to the people who need to know this information and need to have a say on the final decision when it's taken. Does that make sense?
Councillor Narkwe, any sort of
Thank you,
ideas?
Chair. It's not really, I just something thought coming in my mind. I just want to discuss with you, leader. I was checking out the current scheme is saying around the £2,000 per month to receive CTS. So whereas the proposed scheme is saying is earning below 1,256. For me, looks like it's quite a big margin suddenly. So anything like have the margin more if you just rather than 1256 little bit more increase the amount for to thinking about the proposed scheme. I was thinking because it's going to be big effect for our residents. I know that in the future, but just like, is any margin there or just is
No.
how did you calculate for this one figure?
Councillor Samina, so we won't go into nitty gritty. I know you're really sort of eager, but let's try and just stick with that consultation side of things. If there's something that you want to sort of discuss with consultation.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. I was just going to say, should we take that away?
Yeah.
We can have a look at it and provide you with a written answer.
Yeah.
Or provide the committee with a written answer.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think as we mentioned in the report, and everybody knows this scheme is after a long time. So the main thing is the consultation. Of course, we need to give the awareness as much as possible for especially for the affected people. And the second, as well, question was asked by Councillor Mia, we need to collect all the information or feedback from the people as well. So it will be more effective when we make a decision or make the implementations. We keep the record of the feedback of the people as well. That's the main thing. That's I think my suggestion.
Councillor Turk.
Thank you, Chair. I guess a lot has already been said just about the awareness. It's not the actual consultation that I'm worried about. I'm worried about the awareness, people knowing that there is a consultation going on. That's usually the case. People coming after the consultation has concluded that, oh, we were not consulted. So the awareness for the consultation is going to be more important than the actual engagement, I guess.
I mean, can we ask the question? What communication has thus so far gone out for residents for this consultation?
Nothing at the moment. So it's due. So we're going to. I'm very happy to take that as feedback. This is potentially subject to your comments going live
next week.
Next week. So we've got a bit of time to reflect on the comments that were raised here.
Brilliant, thank you. Please, Councillor Foot, yeah.
I'm not quite sure how to take that. I'm really just making a suggestion that maybe we can use the area forums to be able to make these inputs, because I know that the Hamworth one, for instance, had over 100 people attended last week. So, this is quite a big chunk of the residents that we could get to. So I don't know, as these are coming up over the next 2 months, whether or not you can feed into there to get this out into the public arena.
I believe, from memory, there is a round of area forums during the consultation period. So absolutely, yes, yeah.
Councillor Barts? No, that's fine. Councillor Mia, anything to add?
Yeah, I think she wants to say something.
Councillor, yes, please go for it.
Sorry, me again. And I was just so we were saying about sending out letters. People don't open letters. Maybe we could do a leaflet instead, informing people of the consultation, just to make it easier. But also, we're saying we need to tell people. Surely that's part of our job as councillors, to go out and engage with our residents, to inform them of this. It doesn't have to be political. We can just go out and inform our residents. I just think that's a good way. Also, when it comes to our area forums, I think we're pretty close to that, because I think some of them are after the consultation periods. If there's any coming up now, it's maybe something we could fit in, but unfortunately, I think that might be too late. And also, I think we just need it to make it as easy as possible for people to understand.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And this is it. I think we've already had some area forums, so they haven't had that sort of consultation. So, okay, brilliant. So recommendations then, I'm going to reel them off currently. Of course, we can still discuss this. So considering the areas currently underserved by existing council locations, of course, Jack, you sort of picked that up. So I'm all in favour of that. Opportunities to comment early on. These consultations will happen. There could be something in the future that happens again with CTS. So let's try and create a model of consultation. Keep track of engagement. Very good point. So again, everyone kind of raised that. So not just 6 weeks is over or 8 weeks is over. Let's see in between what's going on. And yes, like you said, Councillor Yates, use councillors, of course, 100%. So that is all the 4 recommendations. Are we all in agreement with that, or somebody wants to add something to it? Because I think they're really good. All agree on it? Yeah, brilliant. There you go. Got 4 recommendations for you. It's an absolute pleasure, no problem at all. Now that actually sums up now the item agenda. Thank you, of course, both Councillor Rajwa, Councillor Rajwa and Robert there. More than happy for you to guys sort of stay if you wish to, or but then we move on to agenda item number. So we move on to now agenda item number 5. Brilliant. Okay, so this is the outcome of the adult social care inspection. Members may recall that in spring, the Care Quality Commission inspected the council's adult social care service. The CQC, I should say, considers that LB Hounslow's adult social care services provides a good service. The second highest rating on a scale which runs from inadequate through requires improvement and good to outstanding. Absolutely fantastic. We are joined this evening with Councillor Lily Bath, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, Public Health and Health Integration, and Stephen Forbes, Executive Director of Children's and Adult Services. So we have been asked to note the outcome. Of course, we're not going to do that. We're going to absolutely scrutinise the outcome. Councillor Bath, to you, please.
Thank you. You pretty much said what I was going to say, but never mind. I'll just repeat it. So As you said, in spring, it was announced that CQC, the Care Quality Commission, were going to inspect Hounslow Council's adult social care services. And the CQC has a responsibility in line with the Care Act to ensure that local authorities are actually meeting their duties under the Care Act. So the aim is to really try and to understand how adult social care services are delivered, whether they are safe, and whether the outcomes for people receiving those services is good, and whether health inequalities are reduced. So in terms of the actual inspection, it kind of it assesses the council's performance under 4 areas, and you'll see it with this report is attached the actual inspection, and it goes in detail the 4 areas. So one is working with people, the second one is providing support, ensuring safety and leadership, and then it scores the council on each of these, and the final score was obviously good, which is really good, because given the circumstances that this is a new sort of regime, and I think Hounslow Council were probably the very first, I think, to actually be inspected. So I think that was actually shortly after children's services as well. So you've had a lot of inspections. So in that sense, it's really promising. But I think from my perspective as the cabinet member, it's important and it's good for me to see that the report does highlight some very important areas. So, for example, the priority in keeping people safe. I think it's good to see that is robust, which is what we would want to see. That it shows some of the things. I'm not going to outline all of them, but it basically says that risk is assessed, prioritised, and managed, and again, safety is highlighted there, and that's one of the key areas that we want to sort of be comfortable that our services that are delivered to adults who receive them, they're actually safe. And then there's other things around the council working as a one Hounslow council, which of course is really important because we want to make sure that we integrate our services and we're working seamlessly across all our departments. I think as with any kind of inspection, there are always areas of improvement. And one of the themes that comes out through this, if you do read the report, is around carers, how we could unpaid carers. I'm talking about those that are people, carers who are looking after somebody unpaid, and how we could probably support them better and maybe have a look at what our offer for carers is. So, yes, so in summary, it was good. And there are areas of improvement which we certainly can. This came to cabinet in July, and it was obviously noted in cabinet. In terms of improvements and areas that we want to sort of work harder on, I think they will be picked up with each of the service areas, and there's an adults improvement board which is chaired by Stephen. Is that correct? Yeah. Niall, right, okay. So then that obviously anything that we need to do and the oversight of improvements, it will be dealt with at the board. So in terms of scrutiny, it's up to you. You may want to us to come back and say what there might be certain areas that you want to explore, and say, could you come back and give us more feedback on that? But at the moment, it's very good. So I'm really proud of this inspection, and happy to take any questions really or comments that you have. Sorry, I'll let Stephen. He did all the hard work, so I better let him say. Yeah.
Just to clarify. Nice that you acknowledged I didn't do some work. That's the outcome for me. So just acknowledge we were the first in England to be inspected. There were 3 that were identified initially. We were the first through the whole of the process. So for the whole of the sector, we have become the learning and advisory board. We've had, I think, 9 councils come to us in the last 6 weeks asking for support and assistance. So it's all credit to our staff group that they actually entered this not knowing what it was about. It was an experience for us in terms of an inspectorate that was learning its craft while we were being inspected, and therefore gave me a slight wobble maybe about what the outcome would be. But just to highlight on the good, you'll see there's a score. I won't try to explain how CQC come to the score of 70, because I'm not quite sure I even understand the complexity of that score. But the most important thing is, if I looked to the CQC website, I think they've now concluded 8 inspections. We are the second highest score. So whilst we get a good, and there is no one yet got an outstanding, we are the second highest good rating. That isn't something that me and the team are complacent about, but I think the key thing was, and I think Councillor Bath has said it, we had to submit a self-evaluation to the inspectorate to set out where we thought we were against the themed areas, and more importantly, where we identified where we needed to improve. And for me, absolutely, irrespective of what kind of inspection it is, whether it be adults, children's, probation, you name it, knowing yourself, as we term it, is the key thing. What inspectorates get very concerned about is if local authorities cannot identify where they need to improve. And there was no surprises from this inspectorate, which for us is a key thing, that they are online with us about us understanding where the needs are for improvement. And if we can sustain that, that is a good way to enter an inspectorate regime. And just to add, and they will be back to re-inspect in about 2.5 years' time. No.
Thank you for that report. I mean, it's it just speaks so well of the council and how it's sort of driven. I can only praise you and your team there, and of course, Councillor Buff, your team, of course. We do, of course, have your predecessor to thank too as well. So I think it was Councillor Chowdhury that was took the portfolio as well. So again, thank you so much for all her hard work as well. So lots there, absolutely fantastic. I mean, I can only praise. I mean, you've got 90 councils coming up to Hounslow Council asking for help. I mean, that is not a small thing. That is huge. So well done, but that's all I can say. Well done to you and your team there, Stephen, and all the officers, of course. Yeah. Please, Jack, Councillor AMC.
You can call me Jack. I don't mind. I feel like they call OSC a critical friend, don't they? And if Councillor Razza is the friend for this report, I'm going to take the role of critic just for a little bit, just to make sure it was still a scrutiny report. He's right. It is a good report. That there are some areas where there are shortfalls. I just wanted to pick up on one that I thought was worth mentioning and worth maybe making a couple of recommendations over, which is on pages 11 and 12 around access to equipment and home adaptations. There were a couple of lines in there that stood out to me. People couldn't always access equipment and minor adaptations in a timely manner to maintain the independence that they required and continue living in their own homes. They noted that some of the people who were waiting for OT assessments had to wait for so long that by the time they did have that assessment, their needs had actually changed further, and then another assessment had to happen. It said there is an improvement plan in place, but the waits are still prolonged, particularly those for more complex needs. And obviously the context of all of this is, we heard in the State of the Borough report on Tuesday that Hounslow has, I think it's the highest falls rate in the over 65s in London. And I feel like there is a link there between the home adaptations, perhaps having some shortfalls, and that high rate of falls. So I guess my question, and maybe we take that forward as a recommendation as well, is what are the plans to improve this area, and how are we going to shape this up so that we bring those falls down and address some of those concerns in the report?
I'm going to let Stephen take some of the answer the questions around plans, but just to put some context, there is a national shortage of OTs, and I think it's important to recognise that, and that is a big problem. But you're right. I mean, we do have a high rate of falls in Hounslow, and I think in the report it mentions that because of the long waiting times, some people are left without equipment, or their needs have changed by the time they've actually got assessed. But in terms of what we are going to do locally, Stephen, do you want to add to that? Yeah.
So not to get into complexity, but sometimes the challenge with these inspection reports is they lay it at our door wholly, and it's not all our bit as well. So equipment comes across the NHS and social care and the disabled facilities grant for the more complex stuff. And that's managed for us in the council inside the housing department. So they've got a small group of OTs who do the assessments, the DFGs, the major adaptations. We've got OTs who do assessments in the acute trust on discharge. So when we discharge people, we take the OT recommendation out in terms of equipment. And then we have our own OTs as well who do community-based, post-discharge, or if you're not coming out of hospital. For our own team, we had both our OT team leader retire just before this, and we were in the process of recruiting, and pick up what Councillor Bath said, first time out we couldn't recruit someone, we've now been able to recruit, and we had it's a small team, it's a very small team we have, and we had a couple of vacancies just in the lead up to this for about 6 months, which was impacting on us having to be able to get through the work. So we had to prioritise, and I think elsewhere in the report they are clear that we do have a robust approach to prioritisation when we are pressurised. So there is an improvement plan. Some of that is about investing some of the DFG in staff resource, because we've not been able to spend all of the DFG because we haven't been able to process the disabled facilities grant because we haven't had the staff. So we've agreed with housing colleagues for them to invest some of that grant into staffing. We've been able to recruit our own service. Our current equipment supplier, we've had a bit of a negotiation with them about pace and speed and the availability of equipment. And we have an ongoing dialogue through our discharge optimisation plan with West Mids Hospital and West London Trust Community Services about making sure that we are assessing early enough the equipment need and getting the right equipment. Because we've had a bit of and it didn't come out here, but we've had a bit of an issue sometimes of the wrong equipment being identified. It's very difficult, I think, for therapists who are in a hospital ward to wholly understand sometimes what someone's home environment is. So we've had a growing proportion of people sometimes with equipment is not the right thing. So therefore, they're waiting a bit longer because once we've gone out and done the community assessment, we identify that the piece of equipment doesn't work because it doesn't work within the home environment. Now, the more radical solution to that as part of the improvement would be more assessment in the community, less in the acute. But then we get into, can we make the shift of the staff to the community bit? And that's a much more radical option. But we're absolutely focused on getting this right because there is a direct correlation between falls and early frailty and in terms of use of a community equipment and people's instability. So much of the low-level stuff is walking aids, grab rails, stuff to help people balance when they're trying to pour cups of tea and whatever. Getting that right stops people keeling over. So we do need to get it right because we are an outlier, as colleagues from public health would identify us in the level of falls, particularly in the age group of about the late 50s to the mid 60s. So we need to tackle that because if you have a fall at that stage, you're likely to have a long-term impact on it. So it is one of the things we will absolutely focus on over the next year, and happy to come back with a little bit more detail or to share that with you without having to come back. More than happy to do that.
Sorry, if I could just come in. I don't know, Stephen, if you wanted to just share a little bit about the falls prevention service, because that's obviously our preventative service around, because obviously we recognise that falls is a big problem. So trying to prevent that early is really important. So I don't know whether you want to.
Yeah. So through the borough-based partnership, and I'm the senior responsible officer for the frailty programme. Which is a multi-agency. So again, all of us in the system, NHS, primary care, social care, we are absolutely focused in there about a range of falls services, from a universal information advice offer to early targeting in terms of people who might be getting close to getting into the frailty index description, to then targeted. And we've actually just launched in the last year a specific outpatient clinic offer. So GPs now, if someone comes into the practice and they're looking like they're hitting close to the frailty index, can actually refer into the outpatient clinic within 24 hours for that person to be seen then. It's been slow to pick up because you've got to get patient compliance to want to go to hospital when they're probably at a point that they don't quite want to recognise that they're becoming frailer. But it's beginning to pick up now. It was looking like it wasn't reaching the target numbers, begun to pick up, and we're seeing benefit. The number of admissions and presentations at A&E is heading in the right direction now, downwards. So it's beginning to bite now in terms of getting that target group.
Thank you both. Jack, if you want some more information, you're more than welcome to, of course, reach out and get that information. That'd be great. Okay, so thank you for that. So we're just going to sort of talk about it. So we sort of ask the questions. I'll just go, any sort of committee member want to just have their view with it? Yeah. So Jack has, of course, asked the questions. I've said, yeah, what great work. Anything else from anyone? Okay. Well, you've been let off lightly there. Yeah, there you go. So, no, it's great work. Because we are just noting the actual inspection side of things. So it is a case of just passing on our congratulations as a committee member team to your teams, of course, to Councillor Chowdhury as well as Councillor Bath as well. So just passing out congratulations from the committee members to your team there, please, Stephen. That is the recommendation I have got. Does anybody else want to add to that, or is that probably enough to be fair?
If we could just add for them to come back or to give us some more information about that falls stuff.
The falls, yeah.
I think that would be great.
Yeah, we could certainly do that. No problem at all. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Yes, Councillor.
So just speaking about the falls, just from a personal point of view, with my parents had to deal with this in the last year. I just want to say, look, they've had some fantastic support. So I just want to give that feedback. We've had so much help. Just one thing was the falls clinic. My mum had to wait a year for that appointment, and within that time she'd unfortunately had another fall and broken her hip. So that's just a bit of feedback that is taking quite a long time to get to the falls clinic. But I think if that was faster, I think it's an amazing service, and I do think you have put some really good things in place.
So the falls clinic is different from the new service we've created. I'm trying to avoid getting into the jargon of the NHS. So the new service we put in this year is what's called an SDEC service, it's same day. So the falls clinic is for people who've either had a fall or a significant level of risk. The waiting list there is long and it doesn't meet the demand, and that's a conversation with the ICB about how they commission that from West Mids Hospital and the provider trust. So what we've done in this SDEC offer, because SDEC is used same day to try and do quick action, is it's in essence down the hierarchy of risk. So it's the very earlier people that we're trying to intervene to prevent them having the fall, that then will put them on the clinical pathway to the falls clinic.
This is something new.
And SDEC is going in the NHS in lots of pathways. So you'll find SDEC same-day services being developed for chronic heart disease and a load of other services. It's an attempt to get in before you get to complexity where the normal outpatient clinics exist.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, I don't want us to digress from the
No, we're not going to. I just wanted to share with Councillor Yates that I have referred a resident to the falls service, and they got seen within a few weeks, and they received a visit, and the visit was really around supporting them to stay safe at home, simple things that they could do to prevent a fall. So I think it's worth sort of sharing that with with any of your constituents if you think they would meet that. And I think they can be referred to their GP as well, GP surgery.
It's always good to have this information to pass on, so thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you both for your time. But that wraps up for agenda item number 5. So thank you both again. Okay, so we kind of move on now to agenda item number 6, the delivery plan update for Q1. This is 2024 to 25. With the leader having had a moment to catch his breath, we now turn to the council's delivery plan. For over a year now, the delivery plan has been a regular topic on scrutiny. There is good reasons for this. The delivery plan is designed to help our transformation efforts, which in turn helped address some of our financial pressures. which have just been considered. We have the opportunity tonight to scrutinise the Council's work across 4 portfolios, people, place, capital and digital. Councillor Rajawati is joined by Andrew Cox, Director of Climate and Strategy Programmes, and Mark Lumley, Director of Digital IT and Resilience. Councillor Rajawati, may I ask you to introduce your report, please?
Chair, you've got a habit of saying everything that I was going to say. It's the second time. No, in all seriousness, yeah, this is a report that will be familiar with committee, and you're absolutely right, Chair, to say that this will deliver this is the plan that monitors progress for that long-term transformation that we're trying to achieve as a council, as well as the efficiencies that come with that to deal with the financial challenge. And ultimately, the benefit is for our residents, who should see a better, more joined-up, connected, community-focused council. So that's really, really important. And in that context, we are absolutely clear, both Andrew, Mark and I, that this is not a greenwash. It is about being very honest and open about where things are going well, where things are perhaps need a little bit of nudge or have good reason not to be progressing perhaps as we thought, and where we need to double down our efforts and move things along. So this is the Q1 report, and I'm very happy to take questions on it. If I may, with your permission, Chair, I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek to Q2 because it's a big project that we are very proud of as an administration, and I'm sure the council can be. Members will be aware that we have the ambition of creating a new children's home in Bedfont. As part of that, there was a need for land appropriation, and I think in previous iterations of this, you would have seen that actually it's a risk around Secretary of State approval. That has now been received, so that will now feature in Q2. Yeah, exactly. I'm very happy about that, but that's a really significant thing, and that will move that project along. Sorry, I've taken your thunder as well, haven't I, on that one? But I'm really, really proud of that because that will make a massive difference as well. So that's a little sneak peek for Q2. Keep that in your minds when I next come back for Q2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Okay, so straight away to the questions. One that is always seems to pop up on my name. So really, it's just progress on send. How are we doing with that? That's why I didn't tell you to leave. That's
A sneaky bit of active move, Chair. So on send, we are coming to the end of the written statement of action, and just to put that into context for new members of the committee, we had a send area review 2 years ago, which is not an inspection, but is in essence an inspection without a grading. We came out with a requirement to create a written statement of action on 4 areas for improvement. We've been submitting quarterly updates on that to DFE. So although it's Ofsted that does the inspection with CQC, the reporting on the written statement of action goes to DFE. Our final report goes in December. We have done all but 90, I think it's 98% of the milestones, and we'll have completed all the milestones in the action plan by the time we submit the final report in December. That triggers us because what used to happen in terms of send area reviews is you would have a revisit about 18 months after the initial time. It's since we had our send area review, they've now put in a formal inspection process for send. So there are other local authorities who are going through that at the moment. And when we had our what's called an annual engagement meeting with Ofsted, which is just a day's conversation about all things related to schooling, education, social care and send, it was very clear that we will now get our send inspection in this academic year. So I am sitting waiting on a Monday morning to get a call from Ofsted to say that they will be on site the following week to undertake the send inspection. So that bit is going ahead. The other bit that's covered in here is the safety valve programme. So again, just to clarify for those who haven't heard of that before, when the previous government identified that, yes, there was an issue within the send system of both financing and demand, there were statements made about bringing forward primary legislation to totally reform. That didn't happen, and what we ended up with is with a Department for Education-led programme called Safety Valve, which was identified at local authorities that were projecting significant deficits on what's called the Dedicated Schools Grant, DSG, for SEND. So we were one of those local authorities. We're kind of in the middle in terms of what the overspend would look like in 5 years' time. So we were entered into, as an invite to engage in the safety valve. I didn't test whether or not, if I said thank you, but no, what the outcome would be, but it wasn't an invite you could refuse. So we formally signed a deal with the DFE in terms of a plan over a 5.5-year period to bring our DSG high needs block back into balance. Because what we were projecting was that if we did nothing, and it wasn't that we weren't doing anything, it was likely that our deficit would be in the region of a cumulative £72 million. And the current high needs block sits at about 68 million. So we're year 1.5, technically, of the safety valve. We have met the milestones we've set out. And the deal is that if we meet the milestones, there's an agreed allocation of money that comes from the DFE to the local authority to pay off parts of that deficit. We got an upfront amount within the first quarter. We didn't expect that. So we actually got a chunkable amount of money given to the local authority, not as just a 1-quarter payment, but actually as and I think they basically wanted to shift money out of the DFE before the end of the financial year. So we got a big chunk. We have had every other quarter payment since then, which indicates that we are achieving what they need to see us achieve. The challenge for us, I think, is this year we're entering, because much of the schemes we're putting in place now, and I could probably keep you here till 12 o'clock at night, describing all the things we're doing across the SEND system with schools and colleges and families. But in essence, most of those things we're putting on the ground now start and need to deliver real financial gain and change in the system in the next 12 months. And we have, at this moment, to use the old saying, the green shoots that those things are beginning to make an impact. So the number of education, health and care plans that we're seeing is slowly coming down. We are performing highly. We are the best performing local authority in terms of completion of EHCP assessments within the 20-week statutory timeline. So we used to achieve about 30% within the 20 weeks. We're now at 90% and sustaining that. So we've made some significant improvements, but next year is the real year of having to deliver to make sure that we continue to get the totality of the safety valve fund that was agreed by DFE that will go against the deficit that we've accumulated, and to achieve that balanced position by 27-28 into 28-29. So we are on track, but it is a significant amount of work. What I'm willing to do, I think, because it might be helpful for you, is we've created our self-evaluation in preparation for the SEND inspection. That's now out across the system, so it's been distributed out. It's been a huge consultation exercise in terms of when they say they're coming to inspect, everyone within the system has the SEF and is expected to narrate what we know is what we're working on, what we're good at, what we're not good at, and what we're improving. So more than happy, Chair, to send that to yourself and to be circulated to Overview and Scrutiny Committee for your sight, because that's in essence what we'll be saying.
Please, yeah, that'd be good.
To the inspectorates when they arrive sometime in the next 10 months.
Thank you for that, Stephen. Councillor Tuck, please, your question. Okay, I'm going to mix it up a little bit. So can I have Councillor Emsley, if you could do your question, please?
Sorry, mixing up. I feel like it's always coming to me, but that's fine. I had 4. I feel like that's a lot in a row. I'll do the first one. Yeah. Otherwise, you're gonna get bored of my voice. The first one was just about retrofitting of social housing stock, which is obviously a big flagstone policy of this council. It's a really good thing. It's moved from amber to red in this monitoring report. I was just wondering why that move has occurred. what's being done to mitigate that move, and what we can expect to happen in Q2 for this actually quite important program.
So I'll start and then pass over to Andrew for the detail. You're right. Retrofitting is really important, but it's very costly as well. So some of this is around the funding of it. So there's a lot of work. In fact, you'll probably be aware today. I was at I spoke at our own Opportunity Hounslow conference, and we had a specific section on net zero and looking at how you can fund that, because a lot of those interventions that will have a big impact, especially now council estates, are very costly. We need to find sustainable financing mechanisms to be able to do that and innovation. So I think the delivery plan reflects some of that, but there may be some more detail that I've perhaps missed out on.
Yeah, so thank you. So this particular project went from amber to red because of the grant funding conditions, and actually looking at the fact that we weren't able to meet those grant funding conditions. So actually what we've had to do is close that project, give the money back because we weren't able to meet the funding conditions, but there are future rounds of grants that we are bidding for, and therefore it's not that we won't retrofit that stock, we just need to go through another round of bidding to get the funding. And for the next round of funding, which is for the, I think this one is on the SHDF, Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, there's two with 4-letter acronyms. We're actually going to be putting 2 bids in, so one around this original project as well as then another project. We've also got our own match funding as part of this as well, so actually we've still got that. It's whether we allocate that to a smaller scheme or actually we wait to see where we go with the SHDF next phase and whether we do that or not. But as Councillor Rajwat said, the scale of the ambition is such that any grant money we can get in to deliver retrofit is really critical. But actually we need bigger and different funding models. And as you'll see from, say, things like net zero neighbourhoods, we're looking at blended finance models and other ways that we can drive the billions of investment we're going to need, which 4.3 million is great, but it pales into insignificance by the scale of what we actually need to decarbonise Hounslow as a whole.
Thank you for that update. Back to me. So the question is, with utilities connections, so a lot of our projects that we're sort of building are kind of in this sort of cycle of not being completed because we're having issues with utilities not being connected. And there's a bit of a strain on the national grid. I mean, what can we do? What can we actually do?
So I'll start on the grid capacity issues, which is a known issue that particularly affects West London. So it's not just Hounslow, it's Hillingdon, Ealing, Harrow, and Brent as well. So there is a lot of work going on there, both as a West London Alliance, but London councils, because we acknowledge that a problem in West London can become East London, North London, South London's problem very quickly. So there is some concerted effort there alongside the GLA, and Andrew will give the most recent update on that because it progresses at pace, and part of that is talking to SSE around their capacity, but it's also a conversation with government around the fundamental infrastructure ask around energy capacity. There's no doubt that unless we solve this, development becomes much more difficult because you're literally having to trail cable for kilometers to be able to have supply, and we don't want buildings without the lights on. Andrew, do you want to update?
Yeah, so I suppose the first thing to do is actually flag the fact that this is now on the corporate risk register, so is being regularly reviewed by Audit and Governance Committee as well, because we think this is so significant in terms of us achieving our ambitions, whether that be around house building or development, or equally in terms of achieving net zero, because moving from gas to electricity is one of the key things we're trying to do there. So there is a big plan of action within there, as Councillor Rajwat said, working with local partners, working with the GLA, lobbying government, talking to the UK power networks and all the different providers around that to lobby them, looking at particularly around the who can connect and what can connect, and trying to influence that in terms of the order of connection, making sure that potentially bigger schemes can be connected slightly earlier. very, very complex picture. We're doing everything we can. That risk is really, really live and being actively managed. I think the other thing we're looking at as well is where we can do things to reduce the load on the grid, because we can put solar on things. If we can do that, we need less to be drawn from the grid. And that's obviously a key component as well. So lots and lots to be done. It will be an ongoing risk for a period of time because it is such a large scale infrastructure thing, but we're doing everything we can. But if you did want more detail around that, obviously that's something we could bring back to the committee in future.
Thank you for that. Of course, I'm sure we will pick it up in future sort of committees with how that is progressing. Okay, so now, Councillor Elmsley, do you want to fire all of your questions, or do you want to just pick one maybe, and then I'll do the last?
One then answer, one then I don't know. We'll work it out. We'll work it out the most efficient way. I will go one with Brentford and then one with Chiswick, and just combine the two Chiswick
I think just do, just combine it.
Yeah.
Go on.
So just the one on Brentford, Waterman's still red. It's been red for the past few quarters. I guess it was more a question of what's going on with it. What's the timeline on it? Can we have an update on what's going on and when we can expect that to move to amber and then green?
So yeah, Waterman's is complex. The squatters didn't help. The fire also didn't help. So the latest update that I have, and I can get a more detailed note to you and the committee as well, is that we've got possession of the building and it's now secure. We are fundamentally doing that work around what did the fire damage, what did that cost, but alongside what interventions are needed in the building in terms of that meanwhile use that we were talking about as well, and whether that's still feasible in the context of the fire that's occurred and the work that perhaps would have already been required. So I would envisage, if I'm perfectly honest, that will probably stay red for a little while longer whilst we do that work. That is a fundamental piece of work. But then it may also stay red beyond that, because actually the assessment will be, if we've got to spend X amount to bring it into use for meanwhile, and actually there's a viable proposition around the action on the planning permission that already exists there, is it even worth doing? In any case, is there worth? Will there be any appetite for someone to come in for a short period of time, do works to get their meanwhile use going, to then have it close again? So the squatters really didn't help, the fire really didn't help, but we've got to go through that process and make sure that it all stacks up. And as part of that, obviously communicate that toward councillors as well.
Brilliant. And then I will combine the two, and then I will hand back to you, Chair. Apologies. Both on Chiswick Town Centre regeneration. One is around Ginkgo Corner, which is a really exciting project to rejuvenate that central car park, Old Marketplace. There were a couple of delays during the election period. I know the flower market team is really keen to get going with this, so I just wondered what the next steps for that were. And then related to that, but the other side of my ward, Duke's Meadows, currently amber. We had a great meeting with Martin Falder a couple of weeks ago. He came down to meet stakeholders there. What's the timeline for that big project? Because it is a big project, but it's a really exciting project. So I know that they'd love a bit of a timeline, a bit of clarity on what the next steps are and where we're going with that.
So I'll be very upfront with you, Councillor Ramsey. I do not know, but I will commit to finding out where we are with both those. I know there is progress. Councillor Bruce is sort of progressing both of those separately, but I haven't yet had a briefing on what the timelines exactly look like. I know certainly on Duke's Meadows, you're absolutely right. It's a very exciting project. There's a lot potentially that could happen there. So we want to get that motoring as well. So with your permission, Chair, through you to Councillor Elmsley, I think we'll ask Councillor Bruce to write to you directly. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Thank you. Okay, so just I'll sort of ask the final question on the delivery plan here. So of course there are some plans that have been in the delivery plan and sort of stagnant because of funding and whatever else. Is there any appetite to sort of speak to Secretary of State for help?
Perfect question. Thank you, Chair. So you'll note that we've each cabinet member has written to secretaries of state. So Councillor Bath's written to West Streeting. I think Councillor Dunn's written to Ed Miliband. I've written to the Chancellor and the Prime Minister as well. And there are more letters that are coming out. Absolutely, we highlight in those letters the scale of ambition that we have and how ambitious we are for Hounslow, and also wanting to tie in with the government's agenda as well in terms of their missions for the country and that sort of national renewal as well. And that's really, really important for us. We will continue those conversations, but also as part of the fundamental piece of devolution, which the government have kind of committed to, being at the table and having those conversations to see where actually devolution might benefit delivering some of the more tricky things in the delivery plan as well. So those are all live conversations. Those are all conversations that will roll on. Yeah, absolutely.
That's actually really, really good. Okay, look, so that is all the questions. So we kind of move into now just discussion with committee members, unless there's other questions or you want some clarification on points of the report. Councillor Nagra, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to know the updates about the new road triangle on the homes. It's mentioning still red. Is there a delay to handover issues and delay to lettings? Can you just give me some update, please? Thank you.
So the benefit of going to a conference today on housing and regeneration was that the Neuro Triangle people were there. So I think we're actually very, very near. I think they are discharging the last of their Section 106. It's built. They've got a couple of more Section 106 obligations that they've got to discharge. Potentially, touching wood, we could be looking at November when people start moving in, November, early December, when people start moving in. But certainly with your ward council hat on, once that happens, you'll be notified anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Gill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate the whole team in this report or this project. A lot of areas have been green and improved, but being a councillor in Heston, there's one area where there's parks and there's gone green to amber, if you can see the page number 157. So on that point, have you considered or did you make any plans how you can improve to bring back on the same stage, please?
Forgive me, Councillor, would you mind telling me what appendix it is? Because I don't have them in page numbers here.
Page 157, we talk about the parks, open spaces and green infrastructures, Cranford and Heston area. It was green, but unfortunately under this project is gone to amber now, which is more concern.
So if I take that, I think from reading through the narrative, I think it's gone amber because it means there is an element of risk in there. So green is everything's fine. Amber is there is risk, but we are managing it. Red is we've got risk or we've got issue, and actually we need to potentially do something fundamentally different. So it's not saying it's not happening, but as the risks are highlighted there in terms of inflation, inclement weather, contracted prices, so there's obviously fluctuation in terms of the cost of the different items happening there. And then looking at that sort of rescope and rephasing of the Beaverseal Park project due to the developer going into administration has led to some challenges. So it's not saying it won't happen, but the team will be working to make sure we get that back on track and we deliver as quickly as possible. But as the leader said earlier, we're not going to present it as green if it's not green. And, there are risks.
Thank you very much.
And it's important.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Okay, so Councillor Tuck, yep.
Thank you, Chair. My question or comment probably is a bit more generic. We've seen many projects in here which are still red, and I've seen some movement as well. There are some improvements, some moved from amber to green, but there are some which, as an example of the Heston one, moved from green to amber and amber to red. So is there something, we missed a trick or something in the early planning where the statuses are changing mid-project?
So in one respect, I think I'll come back to the point that we have to be very honest and transparent. And you'll know as a project manager, things can move very rapidly, both positively and negatively within any sort of project. And in the context of the delivery plan, you'll see the scale of the ambition that we want to achieve in a 4-year period. A lot of companies or councils will put the same program over a 10-year period. So we're trying to fit a lot in. I don't think it's that we're necessarily missing a trick here. And I come back to the answer that Andrew gave. You know, sometimes there are factors that are within our control, but sometimes, and a lot of times, we're looking for external funding, for example. We know that there's a skills issue as well. So with the best will in the world, you can progress a project to a certain point and then find that actually the skill sets that you need either aren't there or are busy doing something else and actually will take slightly longer. So I think we just need to be alive to it. And this is one of the reasons why once we agreed the corporate plan, I was really keen not only for Cabinet to have sight of the delivery plan regularly, but also scrutiny as well. So you can understand how things move over the course of a project, and we can have an honest discussion about where there are areas where actually we want to put a little bit more focus, or we acknowledge that it's red for the time being and there's a good reason for that, and we pick that back up when the time is right to move it back into amber or green. So, you know, we have to be honest about it, and yes, sometimes we may well have to change tack. You know, we have to be alive to that as well, and be very honest with that. But it's that transparency that we're trying to achieve here, and just be really clear that we want to achieve a lot in a small period of time, because we're committed to get that long-term transformation of our services.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or discussions? Okay, look, so there is a lot of work. It's great that you know, we are seeing, certainly through watching these reports from now the last couple of years, where there were things that were amber and red, and now they're shifting to green and doing quite well. So, well done. You know, there are things that are being moved. So, and that is to of course, Councillor, the leader, and Cabinet, and their teams as well. So, well done for that. With regards of what, as you know, one of the things that have come out from here is, of course, we do have Secretary of State's letters have gone out. I think Cabinet committee members will be quite pleased to see those. You know, what the replies look like. If we, you know, if we could have those, that'd be quite nice. Maybe not in this sort of setting, but certainly we can be sort of emailed. And we can certainly discuss what sort of came out from that. It'd be really, really nice. But is there any other recommendation? I mean, really, that's about it, to be fair. Yeah, is that okay? Anything? No. So yeah, just that's all it is, really. Just the response from various secretaries of state and Chancellor and PM. Thank you. Okay, we now move on to agenda, and thank you, Councillor Roger Watts. Thank you, Leader. You're more than welcome to stay. Yeah, okay. You've done the local. Brilliant. Okay, so we move on to agenda item number 7, a little bit light-hearted now. So these are sort of updates from scrutiny panels, Northwest London Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. OSC will know we have 3 scrutiny panels working across the municipal year. Each panel is in the early stages of their formal work. So we have a less detail from panel chairs than we might expect, but certainly from future meetings of the committee. Councillor Sidhu, can you provide us with an update for Children's and Young People's Scrutiny Panel, please?
Yeah. So the panel is yet to have its first meeting, which will take place on Monday, the 30th of September. As chair, I will be putting forward Councillor Emma Yates as my vice chair. Members of the panels are Councillor Ahmed, Butt, Chowdhury, Joseph, Lambert, Tuck and Tariq. We've also appointed several co-optees to the panel, including Jenny Tweedy, Cameron Asra and Billy Betty. And officers I've invited to our first meeting will be Stephen Forbes, Executive Director of Children and Adult Services. Other speakers are currently to be confirmed and finalised. Our first meeting will involve agreeing to the terms of reference and setting out our research and findings.
Thank you so much for that. And Councillor Gould, please.
Thank you, Chair. We had the first meeting, and in the meeting we have all the members present. We have discussed the general discussions, and we agreed on what we are going to be asked in the next time of the officers. We decided the vice chair as well, and we agreed for the dates. And of course, by the next meeting, we are going to be start all the process, and of course, will update you in the meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. Councillor Nagra is both the chair of Council's Housing Environment Scrutiny Panel and the Council's representative of North West London Joint Health Overviews Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you, Chair.
As the cover report makes clear, the JHOSC has yet to meet, but would like to provide an update on the early work of the Housing and Environment Scrutiny Panel, please. Councillor Nagra.
Thank you, Chair. We had recently meeting for the Jewish one about 5-10 minutes about the last week, and the next one we have just gone through with this one, and I'll just give you update for the next time. And I'm going to give you update for Housing and Women's Scrutiny Panel. So our first meeting is going to be on 10th of October, and we have already been decided. The vice chair is Reese William, and in my panel is actually as a Miss Councillor Balraj Rai, Councillor John Abidoff, Councillor Richard Ford, Councillor Vikram Gariwal, Councillor Fazal Khiani, Councillor Jinimia, and Councillor Kuldeep Thak as well. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you for that. So, whilst it's very clear, very early days for the scrutiny panels this municipal year, they can play an important role in looking in depth of substantial issues on policy development. I'm sure I'm not alone in looking forward to hearing more from all three of you over the course of the coming meetings and, of course, this municipal year. Okay, so we move on to agenda item number 8. Now, this is the forward plan. The forward plan sets out information about decisions the council intends to make over the coming weeks. The committee can now review the council's forward plan and consider if there are decisions they would like to bring to future meetings of OSC. Having reviewed the forward plan, are there topics you would like to consider? If there are, I will ask officers to investigate how these might be brought back to the committee. Anything? Yep.
Go on then, I'll bite. Street cleansing is supposed to be coming to the Cabinet on the 17th of December. This has been a long-standing issue in the council. I think it was first announced 2.5 years ago, finally coming in, hopefully, fingers crossed, on the 17th of December. I'd love for us to see that plan, to review at OSC, and to work out any recommendations we could make about how it could work. So if we can add that to the list, that'd be great. I guess more broadly, just sort of slotting in the typo for the council tax support scheme that was on the 12th of November to somewhere else. If we could slot that into the forward plan whenever that is updated, that'd be great, because that is also something that I think we should ring fence for the next time we convene.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we'll take that with the officers. I mean, is there any sort of particular officers that will take that, or?
So if the written decision's produced, I think Mandy will take no. So the council tax support one, Jake will take up, and Phil will take up the street cleansing one.
Brilliant. Thank you. There we go. We'll get that all sorted. From any other councillors, anything else? Happy with what's going on the next few weeks? Good. All right. Well, we move on then, if that's all it is. So we're going to go to agenda item number 9. Of course, just before we do the forward plan, of course, you can all, even after this committee meeting, if you do want to get in contact with some of those officers, you can, of course, yourself as committee members. Happy for you to do that. Agenda item number 9, work program. Scrutiny developed a work program at the beginning of the municipal year. It is good practice to keep the document under review. It is a live document after all. Members have before them the current work program. Details changes since we met in June to scope draft. Are there any issues that the committee thinks we should consider? Remember that our time is finite, so if we do add items, we need to remove others. So at the moment, everyone's happy with the work program. Committee members. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So all good. Yep. There we go. So that is all good as well. So agenda item number 10. Any urgent business? I don't have any. Anybody have it? No. And lastly, agenda item number 11, the date of the next meeting at 24th October 2024. And to that is the end of the meeting. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, guests, officers, and councillors. Thank you all. There we go.
Thank you, Chair.